Hey guys, Iggy back again with This Bytes for You with another bite of information. Today I'm going to show you guys how to build a PC step by step inside of the Enermax Equilence case. So far it looks like a nice case. I don't know just yet really because, well, I've only opened it up and taken 1,000 pictures but I haven't done much else with it. So for this build, and you can see in the description below, I'm going to be using the Cooler Master Silent Pro Gold 1200 watt power supply, a HyperX 250 gig SSD, a Samsung Evo 850, a Patriot Ignite 480 gigabyte, and a Western Digital Blue 500 gig, and an NVMe PCIe WD Black SSD. I'm also going to be using the EVGA GeForce GTX 1080 Ti FTW3 Gaming Edition, 11 gigs. I'm also going to be using the EVGA Z270 FTWK motherboard, along with the Intel Core i7 7700K processor, with some Thermal Grizzly Cryonaut just to keep it nice and cool, the EVGA CLC280 liquid cooling unit, along with 32 gigs, 216 gig kit of Patriot Viper memory. So it's going to be a nice PC, but again, I'm going to build it with you guys step by step so you guys can learn. And again, every single piece here is going to be in the description below. Please remember to click like and subscribe to us. That way we can keep bringing you the biggest and the best builds, reviews, and all that good stuff. And of course, once I'm done with the build and I'm done testing, I am going to be putting up the review for this on dragonblogger.com. And well, you guys can see it there. But anyway, let's get started with the build. I'm going to start by installing the CPU, the Intel Core i7 7700K processor, onto the EVGA Z270 FTWK board. Then I'm going to show you guys how to install the WD Black M.2 PCIe SSD. Then I'm also going to show you guys how to install RAM, how to install the 32 gig kit of RAM from Patriot. Anyway, come over here real quick and let's get started. Pretty excited. I'm going to show you guys how to install a CPU into a CPU socket. First off, one thing to note, there are a bunch of little gold pins right here. You need to make sure that you don't touch them at all and that nothing touches those pins whatsoever. If you bend any one of those pins, chances are you voided your warranty with the motherboard manufacturer. And aside from voiding the warranty, chances are the board's not going to work at all. Sometimes you can unbend them, but that process is a little difficult as well. So first off, I'm going to show you guys how to install the Intel Core i7 7700K processor into the socket. Okay, so right now the socket is closed. You cannot install a CPU. Easy enough to open. So you're going to see a little arm right here. In order to open that up, what we're going to do is first push down on the arm and then pull out and then lift that little arm. So now the arm is lifted. This is almost ready to be installed. So what we do here is put our finger here and just lift it. You'll notice that tray pulling back a little bit. Now when it's all the way down, we can just push on that arm again, and that's going to go ahead and lift that slot cover. Again, now we have the CPU. You're going to notice on the motherboard, there's a little notch here and a little notch right here. Let me turn the board around a little bit so you get a better view of it. Okay, maybe you could see it a little bit better here and right here as well. Those little notches work with the notch right here and the notch right over here. Okay, so now the only way that we can install the CPU is right here. You see how those notches align? So we're just going to raise the CPU, bring it down slowly. Make sure those notches line up with the notches on the CPU, and now we just drop it in there. you're going to want to move it a little bit just to make sure it's in the socket and it's good in there. So again, I'm going to go ahead and turn the board. Okay, so now what we're going to do is just bring this down, the little tray down. These little teeth right over here, they're going to slide underneath this peg. So again, we pull down on this little lever, and like we did to open it up, slide it down. It's going to hit right here on this little bar here. That locks it in place. So we slide it down, we pull it out, push it down a little bit more, and slide it back into place. So there, we've already installed a CPU. Simple enough. Now we'll move on to the next step. So I'm going to zoom out here a little bit. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn the motherboard around. And I'm going to show you guys how to install, and actually I'll do it this way. I'll put it this way. How to install an M.2 PCIe SSD. In this case, it's going to be the Western Digital 512 gig PCIe Gen 3 x 4 NVMe SSD. Okay, so the way we install that is you're going to first see right over here an M.2 socket. This is an M.2 key M socket. Okay, so the way we install that is, first off, you're going to notice a little screw right over here. It may be different on your motherboard, but the little screw holds that M.2 in place. So just put a screwdriver there, spin it around a little bit, and now we take that screw out, whoops, and just put it aside for safekeeping. And now we slide that little SSD in place, push it right here. Okay, and like with the CPU, there's a little notch right here that lines up with a little notch right over here. Let me zoom in so you can see it better. All right, so there you can see the little notch and the socket. So all we're going to do is turn it a little bit, is pop that right in here. Now push it a little tiny bit in. Okay, and I'll zoom out. And now we're just going to go ahead and push it down. Now we'll grab that screw again, and we'll just push it in place. Now this one's a little bit difficult because, again, it's a really tiny screw. And once it's in, just spin it around. All right, so now you've gone and installed an M.2 SSD. Pretty nice. And now we'll move on to the next step. So now we're going to go ahead and install some RAM. I'm going to turn the board around so you get a better view. All right, here are the DIMM slots. Now on this particular motherboard, this is DIMM slot 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now the way you install the RAM on this system is slot number 2 would be DDR4 stick 1, and slot number 4 is DDR stick slot 2. If you have all 4 sticks of RAM, you would install in all the slots, but if you only have 2, you would install in DIMM 2 and DIMM 4. All right, so the memory we're going to be using is the Patriot Viper PVE 432G280C6KGY. This is a 16 gig stick. This stick alone is 16 gigs, and we have 2 of them, so it's going to be 32 gigs in total. So first off, we're going to go ahead and push this little lever out. That locks the RAM in place. Some motherboards have it on this side as well, but this one's a little bit easier because you can just slide the memory in first here and then just bring it down over here. And now we're going to pop open here for DIMM number 2, which is DIMM 4. All right, so there's a right way and a wrong way to install the RAM. I'm going to show you first off the wrong way. Okay, as we've seen already a few times, there's a little notch right over here and a little notch right here on the motherboard. Okay, so if we try to install it like this, it's not going to fit. It's going to seesaw a little bit there, and well, it won't install. Okay, so we're just going to take it out now and turn it around. Again, we'll put it in first on this side, then we'll line up the memory over here, and simply, and now I'm going to slide it around so you can see this little guy over here. When we push the memory down, saw how that locked right into place, holding the RAM in place. So now I'll show you how to install the second stick, just like this. Now you see, I fooled you again. I installed the memory the wrong way, so it's going to seesaw again. Just going to take it out, turn it around, push it right in here, and now just push it down. All right, you don't need to push it down incredibly hard. They go down relatively easy. Of course, there is some force you need to put in there, but not a whole lot. Okay, so now we've gone ahead and installed a CPU, 32 gigs of RAM, and a PCIe M.2 SSD. So we're moving along. And by the way, I did forget to mention, this motherboard in particular is the EVGA Z270 FTWK motherboard. All right, so now the next step is going to be installing this motherboard into the Enermax Equilence case. All right, so then right over here on the motherboard, to match up, we have one right here, 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 and here. Now again, this is the one that they've missed. So again, since I know that my motherboard uses it, I'm going to go ahead and install it. But if you don't know, all you would do is line your board up here, and then line up all the standoffs. And if you see you're missing one, you just go ahead and put one in its spot. And if you've counted, for example, 8, which there's 8 right now, if you've counted 8 and you know your motherboard doesn't have 8, you're going to go ahead and remove the ones that you don't see. So again, I'm just going to go ahead and install that one right over here. And they've done a great thing. They've included a little standoff screw so that you don't need an extra tool. So all we're going to do is grab that standoff tool, drop the standoff right here. I'm going to move the case away a little bit so that I have more room. Sorry guys, the camera's right there. And now I just put that with the standoff tool and the standoff right there. My screwdriver is magnetically tipped. I have a little magnetizer, which I'll also include in the link below. And now I just line it in that hole, screw it in, all right, and now that's in there. You can see that right here. Sorry about the lighting. It's a bit rough, but you can see the standoff right over here. Move that a little bit closer. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and, in most cases, it's going to be a lot easier for you guys to install the motherboard with the case laying down. So now I'm going to go ahead and lay the case down so that I can show you guys how to install it. So give me 1 second while I adjust the camera. All right. Now that we have the I/O shield in place and we verified that all the screws are correct, we're going to go ahead and slide the motherboard in. Now remember, the I/O shield had the audio ports here, the USB and all that good stuff. So we're going to go ahead and slide that in. Okay, And now we're going to go ahead and just push everything, all the screws or the motherboard in place with all the screw holes. So now to install the motherboard, we're going to go ahead and use these screws. Now they're not totally rounded off, they have a little edge there. Okay, and then again, magnetic tip screwdriver just to make it easier. And now we're not going to screw it in all the way. We're going to screw it in just to get things in place. And then once things are in place, we're going to go ahead and screw everything nice and tight. Just to make sure all the holes are correct. Now, if you don't feel like you're screwing anything in when you have a screw in that hole, that means that you've put the standoff in the wrong place, so you're going to have to check again. Alright, and then 2 more to go. And after that, we can just screw everything in nice and tight. Oh, I already have one in there. Oh, 2 more over here, actually, sorry. Alright, now that we have those in place, now we're just going to go ahead and screw them in tight. So 1 sec while I take care of that. I'm going to do this in fast forward for you guys. Alright, so now we've gone ahead and secured the motherboard. We've tightly screwed in all of the screws, and not too tightly, you don't want to break the board, but it's in there, so it's good. Now we're going to go ahead and install the liquid cooling. Now, a problem I have here is, and I kind of always forget, the fans are going to go right up here. 2 screws are going to go here, so the motherboard's in the way. I should have thought about that before, but that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera real quick, and then I will come right back. So I came across 2 very interesting predicaments here. First off, with installing my EVGA CLC 280 liquid cooling unit, turns out I'm not able to fit the unit on the top. None of the screw holes match up, and I'm not able to fit it here on the side. Let me put this down so I can show you. I'm not able to fit it here or here. Here because none of the screw holes match up, and up front here also because none of the screw holes match up. So I'm not able to use this particular liquid cooling unit. Now that's not to say yours won't match up, but in checking on their website, on Enermax's website, I don't really see a list of compatible liquid cooling units. So I've already emailed them, and you should see in the description below, hopefully soon, a list of tested liquid cooling units on this case, and then also in the written review as well. Now, all hope's not lost. Thankfully, just in time, I did receive an air cooling unit from Arctic, the Freezer 33 eSports 1, red. Now they do come in green, white, red, and yellow, but I chose red for this build, even though I have blue fans, so not exactly sure why I did that, but either which way, all hope's not lost. Now, the other issue I came up with is that you can see down here, and let me zoom in a little bit so you can see. I originally thought that I wouldn't have an issue with my USB ports, my 90-degree USB ports, or right over here, my PCIe 6-pin connector to give additional power to my PCIe slots. But it turns out I am going to have the issue. So yet again, all hope's not lost. I do have a way to overcome that, but that does mean that I will have to modify this case. Now it's a slight modification. Hopefully you all will have the tools. I'm going to end up dremeling the case right here, make a cutout so that I can utilize both USB 3.0 slots. Now mind you, for this case, it only brings one additional USB 3.0 slot up here, or connection, so that it can power both USB 3.0 ports. But I am going to open it up so that I can plug in another external USB port so that I can link to my one of the 7 expansion slots. I have a ton of USB devices. You would only have to maybe do one. I'm going to do both just because, really. Now, mind you, this is an issue mainly for me and anyone else that might have this EVGA Z270 FTWK board, or anyone that has 90-degree angle ports on their motherboard, because it's going to hit directly on the power supply shroud. Not a huge issue. There is a way to do it, and I'm actually going to show you what I'm going to do now to cut these out. I'm going to take the motherboard out off video to not waste a whole lot of time, but I just wanted to mention these things to you guys real quick. Again, I'm going to take the motherboard out off camera, then I'm going to show you guys how I Dremel this out, and then I'm going to put the board back in off camera. So back to you guys in a few. Alright guys, so I'm out here. I'm going to start dremeling, but before I can Dremel, I have to drill the rivets out of the case, out of the shroud, what connects the shroud to the case and to where the motherboard sits. So of course I need my drill, and I need this for protection, more so for the dremeling, but just in case. There's, I believe, about a total of 14 rivets, and I'm going to go through some of them real quick with you guys just so that you can see how it's done. So one sec. Alright, so along the back of the case, along the bottom down here, you can see there is 1, 2, 3 rivets. This is holding the back of the board, of where the board would sit, to the case, or should I say to the shroud. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Thankfully it comes off pretty easy. Okay, so I'm not sure about these over here. Yeah, okay, so I'm gonna have to take off these 3 as well. I'm so happy how easy it comes off. The other case I reviewed that I had to do the same thing, it took me much longer. Now, there are some at the very bottom, at the feet, and in order for me to get those, let me adjust the camera so I can show you. Alright, so now in order for me to get to these, I need to take the feet off. So I tried to pull them off by hand, I couldn't, so I had to use a butter knife. Okay, so then when you take them off, you can see back there, there is a hex head screw, one that you could take off with a regular Phillips. So I'll go ahead and do that for all 4 feet, and I will come back to you guys in a minute. Alright, so next up are going to be 2 back here, just above where the power supply would go. And And then it looks like there is going to be, I plotted them all out, but I didn't write it down, so that's okay. It's easy enough to go over real quick. Alright, I'm going to need to get rid of this one at the very bottom. And then also this one back here. Then also this one up here. Alright. And let's see what else I need. Alright, let me look around a little bit more and I'll come right back to you guys. Alright, so then we're going to need to get rid of this one as well. And this one. Up in the front of the case, towards the bottom. Now these two right here. And then these two over here as well for the bottom of the hard drive cage. Tell you what, I hate rivets. They should use screws, but it costs more. Alright, so one sec while I find the rest. Alright, then there's one here and one over here that I need to remove as well. That's on the hard drive cage. The hard drive cage just fell out, but kind of what you expect it to do when you're removing the rivets, what keeps everything in place. So let's see how many more I gotta go. So I'll be right back. Alright guys, so I finally got the shroud out. Quite a few rivets, I would say. In order for me to get it out, I did have to bend all the case out a little bit, but that's okay. As soon as we get this back inside and then screw everything in, either with rivets if you have a rivet gun, which I don't, or with regular screws, then everything's going to bend back into place, so you don't have to worry about that. So what I did over here, and you can see the purple from the Sharpie, was I cut out, or I drew out where I want to cut. Okay, so I'm going to start cutting there now. So I'm going to take you off camera for a second to set up so I can start cutting, and I'll be right back. Alright, so you can see my markings here, and I have my Dremel set up, and of course for my protection for my eyes, my goggles. Now the daylight has caught up with me. It's nighttime now, or should I say the nighttime has caught up with me, so I have to have my lighting outside. But here we go. So that just broke off. Let me go ahead and grab another one. Alright, let me just turn it around this way then. Went a little far, but that's okay. take it from the bottom this time. And we're just gonna take it all the way to the end and then just cut it right over here where it bends. And you can see perfectly I got it on the line I made right down there, but that's okay. We're just gonna go all the way down. Alright, so since I made the mark there so that I could see it on the back, I'm just going to work on the back. It's a little bit easier. Alright, now we're just going to come right over here. Alright, there we go. Now, it comes out nice and smooth, and actually, I got a part as well to make this nice and smooth. Not only to make this smooth, but to cover it up like the rubber grommets do right over here. Let me bring that over real quick. So I'm just going to be using the rubber door edges. I'll link it below, but all I'm going to do is just pop it right over here, and I'm not going to do it right now, because if I push this through as it is right now, I'm going to end up cutting some of this metal here, steel or iron. I'm not sure on exactly what it is, but I'm going to end up scratching it. So again, I'm just going to get rid of all this. Now, one very important thing for the inside of the case, since we did push all those rivets through, there's going to be a lot of pieces of scrap metal, some you might not even see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a hair dryer with cold air and just blow everything out. Make sure that none of those fine pieces of metal get to my components. Anything can end up shorting out your motherboard or any other components inside of the case. So let me take care of this and I'll come back to you guys real soon. Alright guys, so here's the final product. Here's the little hole I cut out so that again I can fit on my motherboard on the 90-degree USB ports. I can plug them in because they hit the very bottom. You don't have to worry about this unless your board has it, but just kind of showing you what I did. Pardon the mess, I will clean it up a little bit, but let me zoom out a little bit so I can show you some of the stuff I've done. This case is held together with rivets, just like 99.9% of other cases. So at first I thought I'd be able to use a simple screw. That wasn't the case. They're actually 1/8 and 3mm rivets. It wasn't exactly the easiest, so I have one rivet here, here, and here, as well as here, here. Turning the case a little bit. And let me lower the camera, one sec. Then I have a rivet here, a rivet here, a rivet here, and a rivet down there. Again, as I mentioned, I have to clean it up, so you're going to see a lot of little pieces of metal, little shards. Then there is back here, there's here, 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 2 in there, and then 2 down there, the 3 right up here, so you can see that 3rd one right there. Then there is the 2 above the power supply, and there might be 1 or 2 along the bottom of the case, but that's about it. Now, this pack of rivets, maybe $5, and then the rivet gun, which I thought I had one but I couldn't find it, about $15. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to leave it silver. I bought this so that I can paint those rivets black, keep the case looking nice and neat. And again, I do need to do some cleanup in there, but I just wanted to show you my progress, and sorry for the mess on the table. I had to move so many things around to get this done. But anyway, I'll come back to you guys when everything's clean. Here she is, the final product, at least as per the case. I'm just going to spin it around real quick so you can see. All clean, all clear. None of those silver screws, or should I say rivets, are silver anymore. They're all black. She looks almost like when I took her out of the box. So all clean and clear. Now let me zoom in on the cutting I did. Okay, and then you can see I have a little more dust over here I probably need to clean, but that's okay for right now. I don't have anything really that blows air, so I got to get in there real fine. But you can see those rivets, nice and black. Over there as well. Let me move that out of the way for you. Alright, they're all black. Everything that was silver is now black. But cool. Alright, so now we're going to start building a computer into this case. And I'm going to show you step by step. Since I have already had the fans in here before, I'm going to go ahead and just do that on my side. And since we had the motherboard in there before, I'm going to put that in on my side as well. And then come back to you when the motherboard and those two fans are back in. Be right back. Now we're back where we were before. We have the motherboard installed. We have the fans in the front. Now what we need to do is install the CPU heatsink. Alright, now so in this video I'm going to show you guys how to install the Arctic Freezer 33 eSports 1. So first what we're going to end up doing is lifting the motherboard, and we're going to be putting this back plate on the back of the motherboard. So what we would end up doing first, just going to show you on the back of the case. Alright, so we can see right here, here's where we would go ahead and just lay this flat right here. Sorry, right there. And let me just make sure everything lines up. Okay, so one very important thing, when I had it originally the other way, when I had it like that, you see how this screw and this hole don't line up? So now you just put it that way, and they kind of show you how to put it so that when you put everything in the correct holes, it holds itself in place. So now we can just flip the case over, and you don't want to slam the case down because then you might end up having that fall back out. Alright, so now we're back over here. So we're going to end up mounting the fan this way. Let me move the camera a little bit so you can see more. One sec. Let me lift the camera a little bit so that we get air from the front of the case coming in this way out of the rear of the case. Back here is the rear fan. Okay, so in order for us to do that, we're first going to have to remove this fan. So rather than just take off these pieces, we're going to lift it out of here. Okay, so this is still here, but now this is loose here. And the reason we're doing that is so that we can take the fan out and then screw this little hole in. It'll be for both of those holes. Okay, so just going to put the fan aside for right now. Let me show you maybe at a different angle. Okay, that's a little bit easier to see. So now we have these little retention plates. So the way that's going to work is put them down here so that they line up with the hole perfectly, and then screw them in. But you have to remember, we still have this film on here and we haven't applied the thermal paste. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. First off, I'm going to take this off and I'm going to set it down on the side. And then I am going to open this up, just tear it open. And let's see if I cut it open right. Okay, so kind of put a little too much there, but that's okay. So what that's going to do is, some people will spread it around, and some people, there's 3 billion different methods. The way I do it is you put a dab in the middle. I put a little tiny bit too much, but that's okay. And then when you put the retention mechanisms in place and screw down that heatsink, it's going to spread it perfectly even across the entire CPU. So now I'm just going to go ahead and remember, I took off that film. You don't want to put it, and I know many people have, but you don't want to put it at the same time. Okay, so I'm just pushing that down a little tiny bit. And just remember, after we screw down this guy, and the other side of course, it's going to be perfectly even. Okay, and now since this is an 1151 socket, we're going to go ahead and use the 11.5X screws. Another time when having a magnetic tip comes in handy. And actually what I'm going to go ahead and do is screw this in place right there. Okay, now that it's still loose there, that is only to secure this bracket onto the heatsink. All right, so it's going to go right here. I kind of did it the reverse way they're saying to do it. They're saying to put in the bracket before you install it this way, and that's okay. I'm just kind of excited to put this together and kind of lost my mind a little bit. Now you don't want to screw it in all the way. Just screw it in very lightly. When all the screws are in place, then you start doing one corner at a time. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and screw in the other side, the other retention mechanism. And now we'll go ahead and put in these screws for the other side. Alright, now that all of the screws are in place, I'm going to start tightening them. Okay, that one's all the way. Okay, that one's all the way. Just going back just to make sure. Now you notice I'm doing it over here first, then over here. So I did it, is this the side? I did it over here first, and then I did it over here. So I went this way. Now I'll go over here and back over here. Okay, now the reason you do it, you know, over here, then over here, then over here, and over here, it's not only to let the thermal paste settle correctly, it's also to allow the back plate not to get warped by pressure on one side, then you can't really get on the other, and that also allows for these retention mechanisms not to get warped as well. So now that we have that in place, we're just going to go ahead and put this back on here. Now, one thing to mention about this connection here, so this is the part that's going to connect onto right over here, CPU fan only, and I'll get a closer picture for you to show you. But then we have this other one right over here, which is kind of, you could, you know, put it like that, but what this one is for is if you want to add a secondary fan in the back, you can, and you know, these will help you put that fan back in there, just like these little brackets right over here. So that lets you connect that fan to right here. That's Arctic's PWM sharing. Great idea. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put this back on here, securing the fan back in place. The other little piece over here got loose. I just need to put it back in its place. Okay, it's in. Oh, that's nice, and the fan snaps right back into place once that's in, the way it's supposed to be. And then now we're going to go ahead and put this side in place. Okay, so what I'm doing is the little holes where you would normally screw in a fan, right over here, see this little wire? That's going to go right into that hole, so the way it works out is pretty nice. Same thing happened over here. Alright, and so then now all we're going to do is plug in the CPU fan. Get you a good angle over here and zoom in for you. Now let me just see what I'm doing over here. Okay, so it's going to go right over here into CPU fan. All right, so then there you go. You have that connected into the CPU fan. And let me zoom out so you get a better picture. All right, so right there we've installed that heatsink onto the EVGA Z270 FTWK motherboard. All right, and then now you'll notice here the fan is a little tiny bit blocked, like 1/4 of an inch by the RAM, but it's not going to take any kind of thermal beating because of that. Maybe if you had higher fans, but still, you know, you're still going to be able to suck in a decent amount of air. So now we're going to go ahead, zoom out, and let's start connecting a few other things. All right, now that we have that CPU heatsink in, let's go ahead and put in some SSDs. We'll start off with these two back here. So these are the trays that are either 3.5 inch or 2.5 inch. So what we're going to go ahead and do is I'll go ahead and put in there the brightest ones so that they're kind of not too shocking in the system. First one being the Western Digital Blue 500 gig. Just grab the tray, line up the holes like that. And just go ahead and screw it in. All right, and then just go ahead and repeat the same process over 3 times. Going to fast forward through that so I don't bore you with those details. Okay, and then just when you're done, slide it into place, locks in place. Now we're going to go ahead and do the same for the Patriot Ignite 480 gigabyte. I'm going to go ahead and do that one off film just to make it quicker for you guys. All right, now that I have the Patriot done, slide it in place, and there you go. Now, there's 2 places you can put SSDs. We can put it right back here, so we just unscrew this, put it on the tray, set it and forget it. You might forget they're even there. Or the other place would be right up here. There's space for one right here and space for one right there. So what I'm going to do, just to hide everything, just to make it less cable clutter from inside of the case, I'm going to go ahead and put it right back here. So we're kind of going to do it the same way we did it for the other drives. These 2 down here, we'll just unscrew this. It's on there kind of tight. And then I'll just go ahead and put in the Kingston HyperX. And I'll put it in, yeah. So just remember, if you put it in this way, that screw is going to block you. So you're going to need to put it in this way, okay? And when I say this way, I mean this is going to lock in place right here with this little lip. It slides right in here, push it here, and then you screw it right up in here. So it's going to be hanging out of here, okay? So like before, just grab the screw, line up the holes, or at least one hole, just to get it in there. Okay, now that you have that one in there, we can go ahead and put in the rest. I'm just going to tighten them all real quick. Okay, so now that we have that done, again what we're going to do is we're going to align this lip down here and then screw in the SSD with a thumb screw. We don't need to use a screwdriver. Right there is in place. And I'm going to go ahead and do that same process again with the Samsung Evo 850. I'm going to do that one off film because I've already shown you with the Kingston. So give me 1 second, I'll be right back. Now with that in place, just drop it again right in here. And that's it. It's screwed in place. Now there is a huge chance that during the cabling portion of this video, we're going to end up just unscrewing them, and these two as well, so we get the cable in well, but just showing you for right now how to install them. So let's see, flipping the computer around, so then we have the video card, and that's about it. Aside from the video card, of course, then we have to connect all the fans, and actually, I'm sorry, we have the power supply as well that goes in right here. So let's go ahead and do the video card first, and then we'll come back to the power supply. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and install the video card. Now, it's a little bit different than in most cases. In most cases, you would install the video card by removing the screws from right in here. Now, while you can see them, you can't access them. Let me show you this way. You can't access them. So the way you do it in this case is through back here. Let me move you a little bit. Actually, we're going to go ahead and remove this screw right here. This keeps this little locking mechanism in place. Okay, and now we'll take that out. And you see how this is on the outside. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this one. The top one is for the buy one PCIe, actually, sorry, the buy four PCIe on this particular motherboard. Okay, and then we'll just go ahead and take two of these out. And now let me get in a little bit closer so you can see how the video card fits in. All right, now that we've removed those slot covers here, we're going to go ahead and install the EVGA GeForce GTX 1080 Ti FTW3 ICX. Okay, so we'll just line it up here. And that's it. Push it in place and it's installed. So now we're going to go ahead and come around the back. Let me move you a little bit. Come around the back and we're going to go ahead and screw in those PCIe slots, or the card, correctly into the PCIe slot. All right, now that you've seen the way that little retention mechanism works here, when we removed it and we've put in the video card, we'll just go ahead and screw it in real quick. Seems like more and more more and more cases are choosing that method of securing your cards. Alright, so now let's go ahead and put that mechanism back in place. So it latches in to the side right over here and over here with this and with this. Ah, that's clever. Okay, and now we'll just screw that in place. Alright, so now we've already installed the video card, CPU, motherboard, RAM, all the SSD, including the M.2 PCIe card. Now let's go ahead and install the power supply. Now since we cut the hole on the bottom of the case right back here, that's going to be for the USB 3.0 connection. Now the power supply is going to go in right in here, so what I'm going to go ahead and do is connect that first before we get to having the power supply in its way. So just turn it around over here. Okay, and now we have the USB 3.0 connection here. I'm just going to pop it through that hole. Or actually, sorry, now that I have it in my hands, I'm going to go ahead and spin it around. Okay, and so that you can see what I'm doing, I'm first going to pop it through here. Let me adjust the camera so you can see exactly what I'm doing. Okay, so now I'm going to feed it right in here. And that's it. It's in its spot. And then if I wanted to, I could go ahead and plug this one in as well, but I just realized I have a USB header here. The top panel of this case has two USB 3.0s and two USB 2.0s. Each one of those headers is for 2 ports. So I'm not going to go ahead and do that. I do have a converter that I could use. I'm not going to, but I could use that converts USB 3.0 to a USB 2.0 header so that you can plug in a USB 2 in case you're out of USB 2.0 ports. But so now let's go ahead and pop in the power supply. So let me bring down the camera again. So we can see here the USB 3.0. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is, well, and I won't do it right now, but I'm going to go ahead and sort everything so that nothing's in front of it, in front of the cable, like we can see right over here. So it's just going to make cabling a little bit more of a mess. Now, usually, I would always recommend you have power supplies that are fully modular. This one is partially modular. So the ones that are connected are the 24-pin ATX connection, PCIe by 6 and by 8 or by 6 plus 2. So by 6 and by 6 plus 2. And then it has a 4x4 EPS connection for power for the CPU. Then another 6 plus 2 and 6 pin there. And then last but not least, another EPS 4 plus 4, so 8 pin connection for the CPU. So yes, it has 2. Some motherboards have 2. This particular one does not. So a fully modular power supply allows you to just use less cables in your system. The bad part about the fully modular power supply is you'd have to take out the entire power supply if later on you added a second video card or something along those lines, and you have to add in the connection. But either way, so since there is a filter down here and there is an elevation down here, I'm going to go ahead, put the fan face down and slide the power supply into place. Uh-oh, so this is getting in the way, so let me disconnect it now real quick. Hopefully I can fit it in again. Thankfully it does look like I can. So now that the power supply is in, I'm going to go ahead and screw in all the power supply cables. So let me move this jumble of cables out of the way. Camera's really close. So, sorry about my hand in the way, just dropping screws left and right. All right, and let me angle this better. All right, now let's go ahead and screw them all in. All right, so now that that's in, see the power supply in there, all nice and pretty. And then we can go ahead and plug in the USB 3.0 connection. So I'm just going to flip the case around again, but first let me bring this around, the USB 3 connection. So one thing I'm not sure about is how, and I'm going to move the camera, how that connection would work with a power supply. How those grommets work with a power supply there, because I barely have any room now. Let me see. Okay, so let me just go ahead and plug this in real quick. All right, so I have the connection back in place over here. See with that little blue thing right there, that's where the notch goes. And let me bring you a little bit closer so you can see what I'm talking about. All right, so you can see this right here, the grommet. Sticking my fingers through, I can, you know what, I guess I could fit a header. Let me see how that works. It's very tight, but yeah, I guess I could. Look at that. Okay, it's very tight, but you come in at an angle, and I'll show you back here. Let me move the camera down so you can see what I mean. Here is where the grommet is, and I could slide it right through here. I don't have a lot of wiggle room. Okay, so you can see right here is where the rubber grommet is. I can fit my finger over here just fine, but then remember there's two rubber grommets. This one right back here, I can barely fit anything, but I can fit in one of those connections perfectly fine. It's tight. You might have to fumble with it, but you can get it in there. I just wanted to show you how that worked out. So now at this point, let's go ahead and start cabling the machine.